The One Thing, The Surprisingly Simple Truth Behind Extraordinary Results by Gary Keller with J. Papasan, 2012. Part 1. The Lies. They mislead and derail us. You must first understand that everything you believe about success might be wrong, for there are lies masquerading as truths that keep you from achieving extraordinary results. Keller opens by sharing his personal journey from being a workaholic who measured himself by how busy he was to discovering that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. The lies you have been told, that everything matters equally, that multitasking is efficient, that you should live a disciplined life, that willpower is always on will call, that you can lead a balanced life, and that big is bad, have led you astray. The truth is that success comes from narrowing your concentration to one thing, and this book will guide you through dismantling each lie and replacing it with a truth that sets you free. You must reject the lie that everything matters equally, for in reality, not all things are created equal, and not everything matters equally. The Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, teaches you that a small number of things produce the majority of your results. Keller extends this with the concept that of the 20%, a tiny few, the 1%, produce as much as the other 99% combined. This is the multiplier effect in action, where the fewest things produce the most significant outcomes. When you look at your to-do list, you must ask yourself which one item, if done, would make everything else easier or unnecessary. That one thing is your leverage point, and focusing on it changes everything. You must abandon the lie that multitasking is effective, for it is actually a productivity myth that reduces your effectiveness. When you try to do two things at once, you cannot do them both well because your brain lacks the capacity to fully focus on two things simultaneously. Task switching is what you are really doing, and every time you switch, you pay a switching cost in time and attention. Keller reveals that multitasking is a sequential activity where you bounce between tasks, losing momentum and focus with each switch. Research shows that multitasking lowers your IQ, reduces your ability to concentrate, and can even cause long-term damage to your brain's ability to focus. The alternative is to give your one thing your complete, undivided attention until it is done, producing higher quality work in less time. You must move beyond the lie that you can build a disciplined life through sheer force of will. The myth of the disciplined person who succeeds at everything through willpower alone is just that, a myth. Keller explains that success is not about becoming disciplined in all areas, but about developing the right habits in the most important areas. Discipline requires willpower, and willpower is a limited resource that depletes throughout the day. You have only so much willpower, and once it is gone, you revert to your default behaviors. Instead of trying to discipline yourself across the board, you need to select one habit, build it until it becomes automatic, and then move to the next. The key is not more discipline, but the right discipline in the right place at the right time. You must recognize that willpower is not always on call, and that you need to schedule your one thing when your willpower is at its peak. Keller explains that willpower is like a battery with a limited charge. You start the day fully charged, and every decision, every act of self-control, every distraction you resist drains that battery. By the end of the day, your willpower is depleted, and you are more likely to make poor choices or give in to temptation. This means you cannot rely on willpower to carry you through your most important work late in the day. Instead, you must do your one thing first, when your willpower is at its highest, protecting that time from the demands and distractions that will inevitably arise as the day wears on. You must challenge the lie that you can live a perfectly balanced life, for balance is actually a myth that creates mediocrity. Keller introduces the concept of the balancing act between work and life, but argues that instead of seeking perfect balance, you should seek counterbalance. At different times, different areas of your life will demand more of your attention, and you must shift your focus accordingly. The key is to be aware of when you are out of balance and to correct it before it becomes a problem. There will be seasons when your one thing requires you to lean heavily into work, and seasons when you must lean heavily into family or health. The goal is not perfect balance every day, but thoughtful imbalance over time. You must discard the lie that big is bad, for thinking small keeps you small and limits your potential. Keller challenges you to think big, to set audacious goals that scare you and excite you in equal measure. When you set goals that are too small, you achieve them and then stop, never reaching for what might be possible. Big thinking activates your potential, stretches your capabilities, and attracts resources and people you never imagined. The path to extraordinary results begins with asking yourself a big question. What is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? When you apply this question to your life, your career, your relationships, you unlock possibilities you never knew existed. Part 2. The truth. The simple path to productivity. You must discover the focusing question that changes everything. What is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? This question is the foundation of the entire one thing philosophy, and it works at every level of your life. It creates a domino effect, where focusing on the one thing that matters most sets off a chain reaction of positive outcomes. The question forces you to prioritize, to eliminate distractions, and to identify the leverage point that multiplies your efforts. Keller explains that this question works for your big picture goals and your daily tasks, helping you connect where you are going with what you need to do right now. When you ask this question regularly, you develop a clarity that transforms how you work and live. You must understand the difference between success and extraordinary success, which lies in the domino effect. Keller uses the metaphor of dominoes to illustrate how focusing on one thing leads to remarkable results. Just as a single domino can knock over another domino 5 times its size, and that domino can knock over another, until you reach a domino large enough to knock over the Empire State Building. Your one thing creates momentum that compounds over time. The key is to find the one domino that, when toppled, will start the chain reaction toward your biggest goals. Extraordinary success is not about doing many things well, but about doing the right thing with such focus that it makes everything else possible. You must learn that success leaves clues, and those clues point to the power of focusing on one thing. Keller shares stories of successful people across different fields who attribute their achievements to singular focus. Whether in business, sports, art, or science, the pattern is consistent. Those who achieve extraordinary results concentrate their energy on a single priority until they master it. The great performers do not spread themselves thin. They narrow their focus to the point where they can excel. These clues reveal that the path to greatness is not through doing more, but through doing less, but doing it with such depth and intensity that you become exceptional. You are encouraged to look at the successful people you admire and ask what one thing they focused on to get where they are. Part 3. Extraordinary Results. Unlocking the biggest possibilities in your life. You must start by asking the big question and finding the big answer in every area of your life. Keller guides you to apply the focusing question to your purpose, your priorities, and your productivity. For purpose, ask, what is my one thing that gives my life meaning and direction? For priority, ask, what is my one thing right now that matters most? For productivity, ask, what is my one thing I can do today to move forward? These 3 levels connect your long-term vision to your daily actions, ensuring that what you do today aligns with where you want to go. The big question is not just for work, but for every domain: your health, your relationships, your finances, your spirituality. When you find your one thing in each area, you create a life of coherence and purpose. You must live with purpose by understanding that purpose gives you direction, meaning, and the motivation to persevere. Your purpose is your one thing, the reason you get up in the morning and keep going when things get hard. Without purpose, you drift. With purpose, you have a compass that guides every decision. Keller explains that purpose is not something you find, but something you cultivate, a deep sense of why you exist and what you want to contribute. When you connect your daily actions to your larger purpose, even mundane tasks take on significance. You are invited to reflect on what matters most to you and to let that purpose become the lens through which you view everything else. You must prioritize by priority, understanding that priorities are not static but shift as you move through life. Your one thing today may not be your one thing next month, and you need the wisdom to recognize when to change focus. Keller introduces the concept of time blocking, where you protect your one thing by scheduling it first and treating it as non-negotiable. You also need to block time for planning your priorities and blocking time for rest, because you cannot sustain extraordinary results without renewal. Priority is about knowing what matters now and giving it your full attention, trusting that by doing so, you are building toward your larger goals. The key is to be intentional about your priorities, rather than letting circumstances dictate them. You must pursue productivity for its own sake, but for the sake of living a great life. Productivity is not about cramming more into your day, but about achieving what matters most with the time you have. When you focus on your one thing, you become more productive because you are working on what truly counts. Keller emphasizes that productivity should serve your life, not consume it, and that the ultimate goal is not just success, but significance. Extraordinary results in your work should create space for extraordinary results in your relationships, your health, and your personal growth. You are encouraged to measure your productivity not by how busy you are, but by how much progress you make on what matters most. You must commit to living the one thing life by making it a daily practice. Keller acknowledges that the pull toward distraction, the pressure to do more, and the cultural narrative of busyness will constantly challenge your commitment to the one thing. You will need to develop the courage to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. You will need to create environments that support your focus and remove obstacles that undermine it. You will need to build habits that reinforce your priorities and eliminate habits that fragment your attention. The one thing life is not easier than the scattered life, but it is more fulfilling, more productive, and ultimately the only path to extraordinary results. You are invited to begin today by asking yourself the focusing question and taking one small step toward your one thing, trusting that this single action, repeated consistently, will transform everything. To show love and appreciation, like, share, and subscribe.